what I want to do is I want to show you how to take your cup form that we had the last time, how to attach the foot ring and how to attach a handle. Now, what I did was at the end of our last session, I left the handles on a plastic tray, I left the cup and the foot ring on a plastic tray, and I covered them up tightly with a bag, and that allowed the moisture to even out between all of the items. So when I put them on today, I shouldn't have any trouble with cracking. The first thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to get the foot ring on. Now, it's been sitting in contact with this, and I know it's the exact same moisture. What I'm going to do is, first of all, I am going to make sure that this is nice and round and it is centered on top. That looks good. I'm then going to prep the surface by scoring, and I do like to over score a little bit because when I go to blend, I want to make sure that the area that I'm blending is going to be blending into a scored area. And then I'm also scoring the foot ring. Now, both of these are leather hard, and again, leather hard is like the consistency of cheddar cheese. Okay, they are scored, and now what I want to do is I would like to slip, and typically I use a paintbrush, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some slip right on here. Now, this is actually vinegar that I use. Vinegar can be used, water can be used, thick prepared slip can be used. I like the vinegar because I have read that the vinegar might cause a little less shrinking. Sometimes when your clay is really dry too, you'll actually find that it has a bit of an acidic reaction and it bubbles. So I find that the vinegar works really well. Again, I don't always use it, sometimes I just use water. Now, I position my foot ring on there in a spot where I'm pretty confident it is centered and looks good. And now, with both areas scored and slipped, I'm now going to take a tool and I'm going to blend this. Alright, so I blend it on the inside, and then I do like to blend it on the exterior as well to be on the safe side, to make sure that there's a good connection here and I'm not going to get any cracking. And you can see this is why I overscore just a little bit. It's so when I blend, that pushed clay is getting pushed right down there into the scoring. And then I'm going to take my tool and I'm going to smooth out my tool marks. Okay. And then sometimes a little rib is even quite nice to get in there in places where the tool might be a little awkward. There we go. Now, the foot ring on this project for my Ceramic Stew Kids, this is really an optional thing, but I do think it looks quite nice. Adds a little bit of lift, a little bit of grace to a form. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Now I'm just going to get off the last of the chunky debris there with my rib. Okay, next I'm going to come in here and I'm going to blend a little bit more, and for this I'm just going to use my finger, and I'm actually kind of pushing the foot ring outward just a little bit. I don't want it to be too narrow on my cup because I do want my cup to be nice and stable, and I don't want it to be prone to tipping. So by making the foot slightly wider, that will give it a little bit more stability. Okay, and then out here I'm going to blend a little bit with my thumb or finger. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now, I do need to still adjust the height on this slightly. I'm not going to worry about it just yet. I'm going to go ahead and work on the handle. If I just flip this over, we can see that's looking pretty good. Again, it needs to have a little adjustment down there. Now, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and select a handle. Remember that you've made multiple handles, so you want to select one that you like quite a bit. Now, when I place a handle on a piece, you have to think about how much extension you're going to have. You want it to fit your fingers and have a little bit of extra room. If I were to put this handle on, hypothetically, like this, that would look quite ridiculous because it would be entirely too long. It would have way too much clearance in here. So what I'm envisioning is I'm envisioning cutting it off and attaching it, if you can kind of see, like this. So when I look at attaching a handle, I usually will put the handle behind the form and I try it at different depths to see what looks good. So for me, I'm going to do this opposite than for you. I'm going to hold it behind the cup as I look at it, and I'm just going to mark real quickly so you can see what I've got in mind. So I have it marked, and if I hold it behind the cup, you can hopefully kind of envision what I'm going for. So by holding the handle up, you can really kind of get a sense of the size that you need. Now, when you go to trim a handle, you always want to look to make sure, have you done it evenly? Sometimes you can have it really skewed and your handle can be off. So you want to really check it from the top and make sure that it does look somewhat even there. Now I'm just going to set this on here and then we can see what it looks like. And you want to ask yourself, how many fingers do you want to get in that handle? Is it going to be 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger? I could extend this down a little bit further. I would say like so. I kind of like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mark. I'll turn around this way so y'all can see. I'm going to just take a little tool and I'm going to kind of mark on there where I plan on placing it. And then I'm going to take a scoring tool and I'm going to score. So as I score, again, kind of like on the foot, I want to overscore because I do need to have a little extra when I go to blend. I want to make sure that the handle part gets blended into scoring. Okay, so now I've also scored the end of the handle. I'm going to go ahead and apply the vinegar or slip or water, and then I'm going to turn this around so I can see it better. Okay, and then I'm going to position this like so. Notice that I'm holding it with the handle side up, so gravity is helping me at this point. It's not falling off, it's just sitting right on there. Okay, and now I'm going to use my favorite tool for attaching handles. I love this tool. For lack of a better description, I usually call it the pointy wooden tool that sort of looks like a pencil. But I add a little bit of liquid, so I'm adding a little bit of vinegar to that. And I take this and I press on the underneath side of the handle first. Okay, now when I press that on, that should stay, so I can turn it back over again. Now this part here, I do want to make sure that it is actively engaged in the pot. So I do want to make sure that I'm kind of pushing it. It is rather difficult to get in here to blend without making a big dent. So what I usually like to do at this point is I'll take part of the handle and I'll make a very small coil. And I'm going to add a little bit of vinegar around the edge. And this is not an absolutely mandatory way to do this at all. I like to teach my students this because I think they have a little bit less cracking when they add this coil on there. Okay. It's some people who might be watching this video might think it's overkill, but that's okay. You don't have to do it this way. This is just one possibility. So as we blend this, we blend it into the cup, we blend it into the handle. We do have tool marks that I will clean up here in just a minute. And then lastly, I'm going to do the same thing on the underneath part, on the inside. Another small coil. And again, the only reason that I encourage my students to do this is I do believe they have a little less problem with cracking when they do this. So I've placed the coil on the inside. Now notice that I have to support the bottom of the handle as I blend. And now I can do the sides. There we go. And now I need to think about a little adjustment because I'm not really crazy about that contour at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push in on one part and push down on another. I like that contour much more. I think it's just a happier little handle with that nice round shape. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take a paintbrush, a wet paintbrush, and you could use water or vinegar. The vinegar is not terribly essential since this is just cleanup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm going to smooth out my tool marks. Now as I do this, I need to wash the paintbrush out periodically because that paintbrush is going to get mucky and clogged with slip. Okay, that's looking much better. And occasionally take your fingers in there. Whatever tools you need to smooth, fingers, sponge, paintbrush. Actually, a sponge you do have to be very careful. If you have grogged clay like what we're using, the sponge will take away the tiny particles and leave behind the big fat particles, and then your piece will be all groggy and rough. So that is actually why I prefer a paintbrush every time. Okay, I've cleaned up the handle with the paintbrush. This looks great for a handle. If you want to do something extra, like on some of these, I put the thumb rest or the finger rest at the bottom. They are quite fun and they're very easy to do. The purpose of the thumb rest is to just give you something to grip onto. So you would always blend it on the side closest to the cup, and the part that sticks up is on the outside. So I start off by making really kind of a bean shape, sort of like a little small kidney bean or something. I am going to score as I attach, and I'm going to slip. And so as I perch that on the edge there, I'm then going to take my little wooden tool again, and then I'm going to blend on the side that's closest toward the cup. There we go. And then let's clean that up with my paintbrush. I'll get rid of the tool marks and stuff. Okay, the one thing that I want to point out is when I flipped it over, I did make sure that this little thumb rest was sticking off of the banding wheel, because I could tell by looking at it, it was mighty close. And I was afraid if I set it down like this that I might flatten that out. So you just have to be aware if it's a little high. Okay, the handle looks great, the handle is done. And then the last thing that I want to do is just kind of tidy this up. I'm going to use just a Sureform just to make sure it's super level, and then I'll clean up the footrest. Okay, you can see that I've just leveled the footrest or the foot ring, and I've also Sureformed any bumps that I've got there, but I wanted to make sure that it did look level. Now I'm going to take a little water on a finger, and I'm just going to smooth the foot ring out. I'm looking for uniformity. I want it to make sure that it really does look nice and uniform, as clean as I possibly can. Once again, make sure you get your initials on the bottom, because I did kind of erase them when I put that foot ring on. Put your bell back on it. And then I'm ready to allow it to dry. Now, slow drying is one of the most important things when you have attached a handle. So I am going to cover this up with plastic overnight, and then tomorrow I will loosen the plastic. So, okay, tonight I'm going to cover it up tightly. And then tomorrow I'm going to begin to loosen the plastic, and I'm going to make what I call a bag hat over the top and over the handle. So tomorrow I will cover it like this, I'm going to protect the handle and protect the rim. Those are the two things that want to dry out quickest. So I want it to kind of dry evenly. So that's why I protect the handle and the rim. And that is how you attach a handle onto your pinch cup form.